Can I have your attention, please? Yes, I, Wanda Sykes here. You ever think about all the nicknames we have for breasts? Boobs, tatas, the girls, chesticles, bubbies. Heck, you might even have your own nickname for them. And yet, even though they get so much attention, they're still so ignored when it matters most. What's up with that? Well, on February 9th, tune in to see why I'm talking so much about breasts and visit yourattentionplease.com to learn more.
So we have two of the best political minds in the country that are going to come on the show together. They're both good friends, but they're also super smart. They've been in the business a long, long time. We're going to have a fun, lively discussion on what's going on with the political situation today. How is Donald Trump doing? What's he doing right? What's he doing wrong? And so first we have John McGlaughlin. John, are you there?
I'm here.
John McGlaughlin, thanks for joining. He is one of the best pollsters in the country, and has just done a poll for us that we're going to talk about. And then, also we have John Fund from National Review. He also works with me at Unleash Prosperity. He did, 20 years at the Wall Street Journal, one of the sharpest political minds. We have John Fund. Thanks for joining.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So we got a lot to cover, and I want to start, John McGlaughlin, with you because you very kindly did a survey for us at the Unleash Prosperity on what people think about how much waste there is. But before we get into those particular questions, why don't you give us a sense of what you're learning about the mood of the American people from this poll that you just did?
Well, the poll was done at the end of January, where Trump was only in office for like a week, and although they still thought the country was on the wrong track, it fell from 66 to 58% saying wrong track, and it actually closed a net of 16 points because the right direction rose from 24 to 32. And what's amazing is the Democrats are collapsing, and Trump has a positive job approval, 52 to 43. On his policies specifically, they approve of his policies among all voters that was modeled after the last election. 57 to 38, they support his policies.
So hold on, John. John, when you say support his policies, you mean in general or with particular policies?
In general, because it gets even higher when you talk about certain things. Okay. So like in December, we saw deporting criminal illegal aliens. They support 86 to 8. I guess the 8% were criminals.
Hold on. The 86 to 8?
Yeah. And the Democrats are.
I guess those 8% are the people who worked in the Biden White House.
You're right. True. And it's sad. The Lake and Riley bill, you had Democrats voting against that, where you're trying to hear the girl was murdered by an illegal immigrant, and they're trying to stop law enforcement from getting these criminals out. And 66 to 27, they support just deporting illegal immigrants, period. And by the way, keeping the Trump tax cuts, 70 to 17 they support, 58% of the Democrats.
Wow.
No tax on overtime they support, 66-25, 59% of the Democrats. Wow. No tax on tips they support, 71-21, 64% of the Democrats. And no tax on Social Security they support, 82-11, 72% of the Democrats. So President Trump has a huge mandate to do what he's doing, and the Democrats are in his way. It's crazy. But if they want to destroy their party, let them.
So it's interesting to me, John McGlaughlin. I'll turn to you first, and then John Fund. I'd like your thoughts on this. I'm trying to understand what the Democrat strategy is. And whatever it is, it certainly doesn't seem to be working. But one of the things they keep talking about, because it's their standard go-to line, is tax cuts for the rich. And John McGlaughlin, let me start with you on that. Does that play?
It used to play for them, but it doesn't play anymore because people find out with taxes that we're all rich. Because
right, exactly. Yeah, if you have a job, you're rich, right?
Exactly.
So, John Fund, what do you think about that?
Look, we're going to be ending this initial burst of activity and then getting down to trench warfare. And that's going to be passage of the tax cuts. That's right. The budget cuts. The popularity that John McGlaughlin describes is real, but we're going to enter some choppy waters. The thing I think Trump has to do is pay attention to the Republican members of the House of Representatives. This is a nervous Nelly group of people in most cases. They go with the winds. Not many sit in marginal districts, but there are about 30 members that Trump is going to have to babysit, and he's simply going to have to tell them two things. One, we either make history or we get swept away by it. Because in midterm elections, normally the party in power loses seats, and the Republicans only have a 5-seat majority.
Yes.
Trump has to say, this is historic, this is our only shot. He also has to say, look, in the end, we've seen this with things like shutting down AID and going after waste, fraud, and abuse. If we act boldly enough, people who've never voted before, and we saw this happen in 2024 and throughout every Trump election, are going to sit up and take notice and say, these people are different. Maybe we'll do something that we've never done before, vote in the midterm election. It's a gamble, but Trump has to basically put everything on the line on getting enough people out to vote that the Republicans keep the House in 2026. I think he can do it.
I agree with that. I think, and I was on Larry Kudlow's show earlier today on this same station, and we were making that, go for the gold. You've got the wind behind you right now, and you're right, John Fund, that, who knows, voters are fickle. They can, the political mood can change overnight, but right now when you're riding on this crest, what are they waiting for, John Fund? I mean, get the budget done, get the tax cut done, do it quickly. You do what FDR did when he came into office, and a blizzard of activity before the other side even knew what hit them. Reagan did that very effectively too. So do you think he can get it done, John? Do you think there's enough unity in the Republican Party? They only have a 2 or 3 seat majority in the House of 435 people.
Well, by the time they vote on the final package, the Republican majority will be restored. There's some special elections coming up. The real issue is going to be this. Each Republican congressman knows that their vote is essential to the success of the overall bill.
Right.
So they, of course, human nature, will want something special for their district.
Right.
If you're in the Northeast, you're going to want, changing the salt deduction.
Right. Right.
If it's some place that has a bridge or a dam that needs to be shored up, you need that. Trump has got to put it on the line, and I think he's done this very successfully with some members of Congress. He's got to say, look, on something as fundamental as this, your concerns are second to the national interest.
That's
and the national interest are that we have to extend this tax cut, we have to reform government, we have to restrain spending, we have to get rid of the open borders policy, and we have to restore common sense and sanity of the government. He's got to literally say, and if you don't do that, if you're not on board, you're going to be overboard.
Yeah. Well, you got to hang together or hang separately. John McGlaughlin, what do you think about what John Fund just said?
I think it's exactly right. And the Democrats, it's all about power. And what they're trying to do is, those of us who are old enough to remember, I used to work for Arthur Finkelstein, who polled for Reagan. We lost 26 House seats because the Reagan tax cuts didn't go into effect until 1983. The Trump tax cuts didn't get passed till December of 2017 because, I'd spoken to the president, why are you doing health care first? And he says, well, Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan told me I need the savings. I'm like, you're crazy. It's like Stalingrad health care. You need to pass your tax cuts. And when he did, he had a growing economy. But, you have to do it right away. And the Democrats know that, so they're trying to stall. By the way, in New York, and John Fond will love this because he's the expert on election integrity. In New York, Kathy Hochul and Hakeem Jeffries are conspiring to deny the people of the North Country in New York 21, representation. They have put in a bill on midnight of Super Bowl weekend that they're going to postpone the special election. They're going to change the state election law to postpone the special election for when Stefanik resigns until November. Until the November election day.
John, what do you think of that?
Well, people have been playing games with special elections for a long time. My point is this. In all other previous cases, the governors of states that delay special elections have done it with existing law. This is an attempt to march in, change the law,
outrageous,
and force people to go without representation in Congress for 9 months. That is an outrage.
So I would like to ask you about about a column I just read this morning in the Wall Street Journal by our old friend John Fund named Freeman, James Freeman. And he had a really interesting column about how many lifelong Democrats were agreeing with Trump on so many of the issues that he's embraced, and one of them was this issue of the transgender sports. And he quoted extensively from people like Martina Navratilova, which, a very famous Wimbledon champion, one of the greatest women tennis players of all time, who's been a lifelong Democrat, John McGlaughlin. And she just tore into the Democrats, saying, that this transgender thing, this idea of letting males play in women's sports, is destroying, the whole basis of women's sports, and how unfair it was, and how out of touch Democrats were with common sense issues. And she went on. And there were a number of others who have been lifelong Democrats who said the same thing. And I'm just using that transgender issue as an example of how extreme the Democrats have become and how they're turning away their own party.
Yep, and it's crushed them. In that January survey, it's on our website, McLaughlinOnline.com, banning biological men from women's sports is supported by 67% of all voters. Only 23% oppose.
By the way, John, I'm shocked that there's 23% of voters who actually support allowing men play in women's sports, but nonetheless, that's an amazing number.
Yeah, and the Democrats, they didn't understand, like during the Trump campaign, when I was working for the president, he said I was a good pollster only because I worked for Trump. But let me tell you, he made the polls come right. But the thing was, we ran the ad about Kamala Harris, a video of her supporting taxpayers paying for transgender surgeries while guys are in prison. I mean, their ideology is so bizarre and so extreme that it shocked people. They didn't when they see that, they're like, she really is radical. She really is nutty.
You know what, John? It's so interesting you should mention that ad, because I live in the D.C. area, and Virginia was a state that was in play. And they showed that ad over and over again, and I have to say that ad was a stroke of genius, because it wasn't even just about the transgender issue. It basically typecast Kamala Harris as a crazy woman. I mean, any woman who would be in favor of, the government paying for transgender operation for criminals in prison, that's just not a normal person. And I thought the ad was spectacular, and I think it was highly effective.
It was. I mean, it brought sports moms to us. We saw this in the suburban vote, where all of a sudden you saw them at the White House when the president was signing the executive order. All these moms who care about their daughters, they don't want men in their daughters' locker rooms. They don't want men beating up their daughters in a basketball game or wrestling or whatever, volleyball. And, it's like the support was there. It's just common sense. And President Trump, if you want to know what he's doing, when he tells you what he's going to do, that's what he's doing as president, and that's what he's doing, and the majority of Americans support him.
John Fund, we have just 1 minute before you have to take a hard break. And by the way, I hope the two of you, I'd love it if you two could hold over, because This is a fascinating conversation. But
can I just say something quickly to what
Go
John
ahead.
said? Look, here's the unspoken truth. A large number of gays, perhaps a majority, have no interest in having trans sports. It's not part of what they campaigned for. It's not part of their own lives. Mm-hmm. What's happening is a complete divide, and we're seeing this in USAID and the spending. There's a complete divide between the American people and the people who are taking federal contracts and money in Washington. Mm-hmm. The Human Rights Campaign Fund just laid off 20% of its workforce. Now, why did the Human Rights Campaign Fund spend so much time on trans sports? It did that because they won the gay marriage battle, and like the March of Dimes with polio, they had to have a new issue. So they pivoted. But the issue that they've grabbed, which is having transgender males in women's sports, is not one that is a priority with even liberals or gays. So what we're seeing is a divide between people taking money for very selfish reasons in Washington and the ordinary concerns of Americans, including liberals, who don't even want part of that.
So true. All right, John, we got to take a quick break. That's John McGlaughlin and John Fund. We'll be right back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
It's Ocean Drive in Coney Island.
Ocean Drive is the only luxury rentals in New York with a spectacular ocean view. You wake up in the morning and breathe that ocean air. I'll certify that you're going to live 10 years longer. When I became successful, I wanted to live on the ocean. If you have worked hard, you deserve an apartment on Ocean Drive too. Go to oceandrivenyc.com and reward yourself.
If you're a policeman, fireman, doctor, nurse, or teacher, you qualify for a limited time offer at oceandrivenyc.com. Terms and conditions apply. Here's John Katsimatidis Jr.
Are you paying too much for your home or business heating oil? My family owns and operates United Metro Energy, and we can offer you a lower price and better service right now. No other heating oil company can match our tremendous buying power. We own our own refinery, our own storage tanks, and the largest fleet of company-owned trucks.
We get a 20-cent a gallon tax credit with United Metro Energy's biofuel.
We're a community-conscious, family-run business.
We're here for you 24/7.
Contact me anytime.
Email john@umecny.com.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC. I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend. I am going to continue my segment with John Fund, formerly of the Wall Street Journal, now writes for National Review, works with Unleashed Prosperity, and is one of the top political analysts in the country. And then we also have one of the top political pollsters in the country, John McGlaughlin, who's in the business a long time, and I very much respect his polls. In fact, I respect his polls so much we just did a poll with him. Gentlemen, thanks again for holding on. We'll pay you a little overtime this time, and by the way, there's no tax on overtime now, so that makes it a little more attractive. John McGlaughlin, I wanted to ask you about the two poll questions that we added to your most recent poll about waste in government. And the one that I found was really fascinating was, we asked how many cents out of every dollar do you think is wasted? And then there was another question related to that. So tell us what you found.
Well, you have the one question where, does the federal government does a better job than most people give it credit for? Only 25% agree with that statement. 64% said the federal government is too wasteful and inefficient, and it was across all party lines, and whether you voted for Trump or Harris or who you vote for Congress next time. And then we asked, in your own personal opinion, how much of the federal budget do you think is wasteful spending? And we gave them groups of, like 10% or less, 11 to 20, 21, 30, 20, all the way up to more than 90%. And when you took the mean average, it was 38% of the federal government they think is wasted. That's 1,000 voters. And if you voted for Trump, it was 41%, Harris 35%. If you Republican, 41%, Democrat 36%, Independents 38%. So it's really across the board, ideologically and partisan-wise, and most Americans, their perception is that 38% of every dollar that they send the federal government is waste.
Yeah, and that's, by the way, that's if they're right about that, John McGlaughlin, that's $2 trillion a year that is wasted. I by the way, I think I would have said about 33%. Maybe I'm a little bit lower than
you're getting weak there, Steve.
Yeah, right.
John, so you need to talk to him. You got to toughen him up. It's higher than that.
Right. So, John Fund, what the takeaway that I read from John McGlaughlин's latest poll, in just all of the questions they asked, it's a fascinating poll, is just how completely out of touch Washington is with where the American people are. It's almost like people inside the Beltway are living in some kind of bubble.
Bubble? It's an iron dome. Look,
an iron dome, yeah.
Look, common sense does not penetrate it. Look, the public choice school of economics proved that bureaucrats are like any other people. They engage in self-profit and maximizing behavior. They want more. And government is the easiest place to get money if you can't succeed in the private sector. So Washington attracts people who try to get government money. And this is across the board. The Pentagon has failed its last 7 straight audits. John Lehman, the former Secretary of the Navy under Reagan, says one of the most important things Donald Trump can do is repair and replace the federal defense contracting system, which is cost plus It means we pay whatever the military charges us for a weapons system plus whatever their costs are, which leads to outrageous expenditures. Donald Trump knows this. He tells this story about the new Air Force One jet and how he managed to get a lot of savings out of that because he simply insisted that there be competitive bidding. The bottom line is Washington exists to spend our money. And we have to understand that if we don't put constraints on it, they're going to bleed us dry. So I believe that what Donald Trump is doing is injecting common sense into our budget process. People are screaming. When people are screaming as loudly as they are in Washington today, you know he's over the target. By the way, those Congress people who went in front of the Department of Education and demanded entrance, saying they had been ignored, now they know how parents in America have felt over the last 45 years
Great point.
since the Department of Education was founded. This is a revolt against the common sense reformers who have arrived in Washington, and the more they're screaming, the more we know they're on target.
So yesterday I was on Fox News and I said something about how I am 64 and next week I turn 65, and just made the point that I will then be eligible for Social Security and Medicare. And I was just suggesting that maybe people like me don't need to get all of these government benefits, and the retirement age could be lifted a little bit. Oh my God, the left went completely crazy on this, and oh my God, Steve Moore he's a Trump advisor, he wants to cut Social Security. See what we said. And John McGlaughlin, this is for you, but it sounds like the Democrats, every time they're on the defensive, they always say Social Security and Medicare. They want to cut Social Security and Medicare. And my opinion is probably Republicans shouldn't even mention the word Social Security and Medicare, but because those are two of the most popular programs, right?
Right, and the problem you have with it is most people, by the way, half the voters in the country will tell you that they don't have 401ks, they don't have retirement savings.
Right.
So those voters, they say they've been paying in Social Security all their lives, and what they're really upset about is they're going to give it to illegal immigrants. And by the way, one of the great reforms they could have is Medicaid, because Biden increased Medicaid spending, but you could be an able-bodied adult and not working and not looking for a job, and they will pay for your health care through Medicaid.
Ridiculous.
You should
Outrageous.
be required to work, and you could save, $100 billion if they did that reform. It just makes common sense.
John Fund, what are your thoughts about this? You fought these battles.
The great genius of FDR and Lyndon Johnson when they created programs like Social Security and Medicare was that because they had payroll taxes from people's paychecks and also forced Medicare recipients to pay premiums, they created the myth that these programs are things that the people themselves have paid for. In reality, of course, there are enormous subsidies to Social Security recipients and Medicare recipients. We're not going to change that overnight. What we need to do is use, for example, with Medicare, price transparency and changing and getting people like Dr. Oz, who's going to take charge of Medicare and Medicaid services, get them in there, have the audits that can reduce the fraud levels, change the formulas, change the compensation formulas, ignore what the hospitals and the other pressure groups say temporarily, and rationalize the system. Then we can have a later discussion about reforming the program, for example, on Social Security, allowing people to take some of their payroll taxes and investing it into the stock market or private systems. That is going to be a two-stage battle. But having Elon Musk and his marauders go through Medicare and Medicaid now is the first necessary step.
Yeah. Yep. So, John McGlaughlin, in the latest poll you did that we've been talking about, what was there anything that surprised you in that poll?
It's a pleasant surprise that President Trump is popular and has support for his policies, but it's because they're getting the message out about what they're doing. By the way, going to John Fund's point and to your point, we were running ads during the Trump campaign that were going after Kamala Harris because they wanted to raise taxes on unrealized capital gains. They wanted to raise taxes, would have been on people's homes and 401ks. Half the people now have 401ks. we should be trying to find out, how we can encourage people to have more of their own savings that the government doesn't control for their retirement and for their health care. So there's a lot more reforms that we have, whether it's health savings accounts, whether it's personal retirement accounts. We need to encourage people that they have control of their own financial future and not the government. And
that's for sure. Well, I've long supported the idea of letting people put their Social Security tax dollars into a 401k account. They would be getting 2 to 3 times more money in that way. We've only got about 5 minutes left, and I wanted to both ask you one last question. It's something that concerns me, and I'm a big Trump guy. I think he's doing an amazing job. But John McGlaughlin, I mean, every time you turn on the TV, it's Trump, 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 Trump. Everywhere he's going to be at the Super Bowl. He's, just in the public eye 24/7. And one of the things that worries me a little bit is Trump fatigue. He's popular now, but people don't want politics in their face all of the time. And I just wonder, should he tone it down a little bit? Should he not always be in the spotlight? He loves to be in the spotlight, but is there a risk of Trump fatigue? John McGlaughlin, I'd like you to go first on that.
Well, good luck with that.
Exactly.
I worked with Reagan, you'd write him a script. He was perfect. And he'd do a 30-second ad. He'd do an Oval Office dress. He was great. Arnold, I worked with, and Arnold was an action figure because we had action.
Right.
Trump is the first reality TV president, and because he had the highest rated reality TV show, and he didn't run in 20. We wrote a plan for him to run in 2011 and 2012. He didn't run because they were going to take his show off the air. He wasn't ready. But let me tell you what, it's different now. People don't tune into TV like, you don't have couch potatoes. You have to hunt. You have podcasts. People, when they want to pay attention to Trump, you go on his social media or you go on X or whatever. And a lot of people just aren't watching. It's harder to get a message through right now. So,
John Fund, sorry, go ahead, John.
I think that what you say, Steve, is the old media. The old media is where everybody was watching the same thing or reading the same thing. Now everything is niche. And I believe that there are a certain number of people who are going to get tired of Donald Trump, and they're going to tune him out. They're not going to have to watch everything he says and does. I think Trump recognizes that the message he has to get out has to be everywhere. You have to repeat it over and over and over again until people get it. Now, he could be more careful and targeted in his messages. Don't go on riffs, off in the distance about some guy who's attacking you on Twitter or something like that. Focus on what he's doing for the American people, the common sense reforms, and why people are actually opposing him, the real reasons they're opposing him. But otherwise, I think the Trump show, those who are going to be entertained by it are going to be fascinated. Otherwise, they're going to be tuned out. And I think that in the end, Trump's message, repeated enough, will sink in.
Thanks, gentlemen. That's John McGlaughlin and John Fund, two of the best in the business and politics. Appreciate you guys carving out some time in your Saturday afternoon to come on.
Larry Kudlow here with an urgent warning. While we celebrate Trump's historic win, inflation continues to drain your IRA and 401k, and China is now targeting your money with a kill shot on the dollar. That's why thousands of Americans are shielding their savings with gold and contacting the experts at Colonial Metals Group. Gold has protected American wealth through every financial war. For a free 2024 gold guide that explains everything, please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908. The experts at Colonial Metals Group are the only folks I trust to help you bulletproof your wealth with gold. Go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908. That's 800-621-3908 for a free 2024 gold guide to learn how you can protect your life's work, and if you qualify for a free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver right now. freegoldguide.com/Kudlow.